The Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Diego Castro, bringing you the biggest headlines from around the world. The United Nations raises concerns with Russia about the implementation of a deal that allows the safe wartime export of grain from Ukrainian Black Sea ports. The UN says it has written to Moscow, as well as Ukraine and Turkey, on the Black Sea Grain Initiative. The UN says no ships were inspected on Tuesday under the deal, as parties needed more time to reach an agreement on operational priorities. Inspections had resumed Wednesday, but only 2 inbound and 2 outbound ships had been inspected by Friday. The UN says there are dozens of ships still waiting to be inspected before they travel to Ukraine.
Since the beginning of the initiative and until recently, new vessels were presented by Ukraine port authorities and agreed by all parties for registration and follow-up inspection as outlined in the procedures. Differing views have risen over the last couple of weeks over this practice, and this has led to the disruption that we've seen in the JCC's work.
In the U.S., at least 4 people were killed in a shooting incident during a birthday party in Dadeville, Alabama. One of the victims was a high school football player who was among those attending his sister's birthday celebration. More than 28 people were injured, some of whom are now in critical condition. The party was being held inside the Mahogany Masterpiece Dance Studio, about half a block from the City Hall. Authorities have yet to provide updates whether any suspect had been arrested. Mass shootings have become commonplace in the U.S., with around 149 recorded incidents across the country so far this year.
Please do not let this moment define what you think about the city of Dadeville and our fine people. What we've dealt with is something that no community should have to endure.
Armed men killed a child and 6 others after storming a resort in the central Mexican state of Guanajuato, a region increasingly plagued by drug cartel violence. Footage widely shared on social media showed the aftermath of the attack in a palm-studded resort in the small town of Cortazar. The victims include a 7-year-old, 3 men, and 3 women. Local authorities say it's still not clear who was behind the shooting, who fled the scene, but not before causing damage to the resort store and taking the security cameras and the monitor. In recent years, rival drug cartels have been waging brutal battles to control territory and trafficking routes through the state. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. who went missing 40 years ago. The brother alleged that girls were brought into the Vatican to be molested and that the late Pope knew about it. Pope Francis dismissed the insinuation as, quote, offensive and unfounded.
E certo di interpretare i sentimenti dei fedeli di tutto il mondo, rivolgo un pensiero grato alla memoria di San Giovanni Paolo II, in questi giorni oggetto di illazioni offensive e infondate.
A global study has found that flash droughts are becoming more frequent due to climate change. Experts say that due to their fast-developing nature, they're difficult to prepare for. Here's the report.
This badly cracked reservoir bed in Catalonia, Spain, speaks of a wider problem the country is enduring, the devastating after effects of droughts. The main Spanish Farmers Association warned that they have inflicted damage on 60% of the Spanish countryside, with crops like wheat and barley likely to fail entirely in 4 regions. Spain's Weather Bureau noted that the 3 years of very low rainfall and high temperatures have put Spain officially into long-term drought. While Spain's long-term drought is causing irreversible losses to crops, wider Europe, as well as parts of East and North Asia, the Sahara, and the west coast of South America are suffering a similar problem: flash droughts. A relatively new phenomenon, they develop very quickly, often only in a number of weeks, so forecasters find them difficult to predict.
We normally think about droughts as slowly evolving events that take a few months to start and often last for several months or even seasons. But a newer concept that's been around for maybe a decade or so is flash droughts, which start much more rapidly, and that's why they have perhaps bigger impacts, at least in the short term.
Professor Justin Sheffield worked alongside the UK's Met Office on a global report which has found that flash droughts are developing more rapidly. He says this is due to sudden drops in rainfall and precipitation, as well as high temperatures and loss of soil moisture. The report finds this is mainly due to climate change, and there are many parts of the world which will be affected.
We're seeing it everywhere, but we tend to see it more in those kind of tropical, wet tropics and semi-arid lands. But we also see it in the mid-latitudes, where essentially most of Europe sits, and across other places in the world. So there are a few hotspots, as I mentioned, in Europe where we don't necessarily get that many flash droughts, but they're becoming much more common.
Experts say these types of droughts will be felt intensely in North and East Asia as well as Europe. With many parts of Europe and the rest of the world suffering debilitating heat waves, some countries are better equipped than others to cope with the knock-on effects of high temperatures. Flash droughts could and do inflict devastation on farmers and crops, as well as water supplies. Due to their rapidly developing nature, governments and communities have less time to prepare for them, and according to another expert, it's wrong to assume that poorer countries are more vulnerable.
Impact is not something people can ignore, even for rich countries, for Europe, for example. Because like what we see, drought sometimes it can have large, vast impact on a lot of aspects. So even for a country like the UK, events like that, so you can see very sort of strong impact and severe damages occur.
Mark Sheehan, guitarist and co-founder of The Script, has died at the age of 46. The Irish band said Sheehan died in a hospital on Friday after a brief illness. They called him a much-loved husband, father, brother, bandmate, and friend. The Script is known for hits like The Man Who Can't Be Moved, Break Even, and Hall of Fame, among others. And those are the top world headlines of the hour. Join us again at 9 a.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. Coming right up is Agenda at 8 a.m. I'm Diego Castro. We are One News, all sides, all the time.